Translation department. And during her studies at Bilkent, she also minored in communications and designs. She completed both of her studies with highest honor. Then she continued her studies with a master's degree from College of Europe in Natolin. So without further ado, I will leave the floor to her, and I hope you have a good presentation.
Thank you very much, Bahar. It's very nice to see all of you here this evening. I know it's a little bit late in Turkey. I'm currently not there. I'm in Hungary, but still it's very nice to be with Bilkent students. I'm very pleased to be able to meet with you tonight, even virtually. As Bahar mentioned, I'm a Bilkent alumna. I graduated in 2020. Right after that, I started my master's education at the College of Europe in Natolin in Warsaw. And I graduated in July this year. And since then, I've been doing an internship in Brussels at an NGO. So yeah, I would like to maybe ask our moderator if everyone here tonight is from Bilkent, or do we have any external participants?
Everyone here is from Bilkent tonight.
Okay, great. So maybe without further ado, I will start sharing my screen. So I will start with a brief presentation about the College of Europe with a focus on College of Europe in Natolin. And then we can have a Q&A session. You can ask your questions. Just feel free to ask any questions that you may have. You can see my slides, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so let's start maybe a little bit about the history of the College of Europe. The College of Europe was founded in 1949. So it was first founded in Bruges in Belgium to raise the future Eurocrats of the European Union and future candidate countries. In 1992, the Warsaw campus, College of Europe in Natolin, opened. As I am from Natolin, my presentation will be focused on Natolin, but I will also briefly touch upon Bruges, and if you have any questions regarding Bruges, I will try my best to answer them.
Could you make it a full screen? I think the below part is missing.
Okay, but this is a PDF. I cannot make the full screen. But
maybe you could make the Chrome full screen. Would it work?
Is it better now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks for the reminder. So when we look at the academic offer of the College of Europe, it is a one-year program. It's an advanced master's degree. It's a 66 ECTS. It is taught both in English and French. So the student profiles that they're looking for is students who are competent in both these languages. In the Natolin campus, there's only one master's degree. It's a Master of Arts in European Interdisciplinary Studies. And in the second semester, you can choose one of these 4 specializations. In the Bruges campus, there are more programs like the Master of Arts in European Political and Governance Studies, EU International Relations and Diplomacy Studies, European Economic Studies, and European Law. And there's also another master's program offered at the College of Europe. It's called Master of Arts in Transatlantic Affairs. This is a 2-year program and it's only taught in English. It's offered both in Natolin and Bruges. And in your second year, you study in the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy in Boston. But I would like to make a note when we come to the scholarships later. The scholarships offered for Turkish citizens by the Directorate for EU Affairs of the Turkish MFA does not cover this program, but we will come to this once again. At Natolin, under the European Interdisciplinary Studies program, during the first semester, you have 2 study tracks that you can choose from. If you're more knowledgeable on basic EU courses, you can pass some proficiency tests and do either the interdisciplinary track or the pluridisciplinary track. And you have a variety of different topics to choose from to shape your specialization. For example, I focused on intercultural communication, media, technology, and politics. But by combining different courses, you can shape your study program according to your area of interest. And as I mentioned before, in the second semester, you're expected to choose from one of these 4 specialization tracks. I did the EU and the World track, but the Natolin campus in particular is specialized in the European neighborhood policy, as well as it has a chair of European civilization. So you can choose to study in the EU and its neighbors track and European history and civilization track, or EU public affairs and policy track. It all depends on your area of interest. You have a variety of courses to choose from and other activities that are organized with external partners. The faculty and the professors who teach at the College of Europe are quite diverse. They come from over 25 countries, different universities. Since COVID in particular, College of Europe started to adopt a blending learning method. This means that we had online classes and e-learning platforms, but also face-to-face classes. This makes it easy to manage the pandemic situation, since in some periods there are more cases and regulations to close down in countries, let's say. And in addition to your classes, you have different workshops, seminars, master classes, simulation games to choose from to develop your professional and personal skills. And of course, you have to write a master's thesis. And during the year, you attend research methodology classes in order to learn how to write a master thesis, or if you've already done it before, to develop your skills. And a big part of the Natolin European Interdisciplinary Studies program is the study trips. So in the 2 semesters, there are 2 study trips. These study trips usually take about 1 week. And usually in the first semester, there are different study trip offers to neighboring countries such as Ukraine and also inside of Poland. But in the second semester, you can go on study trips that are more related to your area of interest. For example, there are study trips organized to Brussels, to the EU institutions, but also to the Balkan countries and the Baltic countries. There were study trips organized before to Turkey, as well, as Turkey is a candidate country. So study trips are both interesting, but also very educational, I would say, to take the knowledge you learned in your classes to practice, because you actually go to the field and meet experts. And of course, the student body and the staff of the College of Europe is quite multicultural and multilingual. As I mentioned before, students are expected to be proficient in both English and French, but also they speak other languages. And if they want to develop their skills in other languages, they can attend language courses offered by the College of Europe, as well as the Summer Language Academy, in order to improve their French. And they can also take language exams at the end of each semester in order to receive a language certificate as well. The College of Europe also offers careers and professional development guidance. So you can have one-to-one career tutorials to prepare for job interviews, to go through your CV or your motivation letter with the professional development department. They also organize professional skills workshops, which are, I would say, very useful for your future career. As well as networking events, because the College of Europe has a very large alumni network, which is very beneficial for a professional life, because the alumni of the College of Europe work in various places in the world, in different international organizations and institutions. So all these initiatives that the Professional Development Department organizes, I would say, is very helpful. And you can attend different activities and workshops in order to develop your skills in different specialization fields. In the first semester, you can focus on topics such as communication, diplomacy, project management, and also, as you know, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals is a very big part of the work that everyone is doing in the international field right now. So it's very important that you develop your knowledge and skills in these fields. And as I mentioned before, the College of Europe has a community of alumni, over 15,000 alumni, and they work in very diverse and prestigious jobs, let's say. Of course, not everyone may want to have a career in diplomacy, but the alumni network of the College of Europe, if we look at the statistics, of course, there are people who work at EU institutions, but also NGOs, international organizations, also in academia. So you can see that the alumni body is quite diverse in terms of their professional paths. As I briefly mentioned before, at the College of Europe in Natolin, there are two chairs, the European Civilization Chair, as well as the European Neighborhood Policy Chair. So not only within the framework of these chairs, but also within the framework of other specializations at Natolin, there are high-level visits, international conferences, and debates organized with very high-profile guests, politicians, heads of government, but also journalists and activists in different fields such as energy and climate governance. As you know, it's now a very important topic, but also migration, journalism, and media. So it's really interesting as a student and a future young professional to be able to attend these events and meet these people face to face, I would say. You see here a few examples of the events that were organized at the College of Europe in Natolin. But also, the College of Europe is not just academics. There's the big part of the program is also the extracurricular activities and the student life. So both in Natolin and Bruges, the students live together. In Natolin, we all lived in the campus, but in Bruges, as you know, it's a small city in Belgium. There are different residences scattered around the city. So the students live in these residences. And there are a variety of extracurricular and cultural activities that are organized. I would say one of the most important of these activities are the national days. The students are expected to represent the country that they come from during these national days with the culinary or cultural events. The the students of the College of Europe, as I mentioned, live on campus, and they're also entitled to have meals at the student restaurant, 3 meals a day, and they can benefit from indoor and outdoor sports facilities at Natolin. You can see here, there's the end of the year ball and the Christmas activities. So there's a quite fun, I would say, student life at Natolin. And of course, there's the issue of COVID-19. In order to maintain student life and academic life, the College of Europe has come up with a very a solid plan. So we had testings before regularly on campus in order to maintain a safe environment. And when there were COVID cases or when the COVID cases were too high in the country, our classes and activities were maintained on site. So I would say if you're coming there, do not worry too much about COVID-19 because it is managed quite well. Yes, and you see here 2 testimonies of students who were studying there when the pandemic started. Now I would like to talk to you a little bit about the Natolin campus and the city that it's located in. As I mentioned, the Natolin campus is quite beautiful. It is in a natural reserve that used to be royal hunting grounds in Poland. It's not very far from the city center of Warsaw. And Warsaw is quite an interesting city because, of course, it used to be under the Soviet regime. Now it's one of the most interesting cities in Europe. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's also the city where Frontex, if you know, Frontex is an agency that deals with migration in the European Union, but also to OSCE's Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights. So it's a really nice city to live in, I would say. Here you can see some pictures from the campus. It's very historical, but as it's also located inside the forest, we have deers and other animals, so it's quite interesting to see them every day. And of course, I don't want to only mention Natolin. I will also talk to you a little bit about the Bruges campus. In Bruges, there are 2 campus sites and 7 residence halls, as I said, scattered around the cities. The students live in these residences. When you go to the College of Europe, you're expected to live in these student residences so that you are able to socialize with your colleagues who come from different countries. As you know, Bruges is a quite famous city. It's even called the Venice of the North. So I didn't study there, but I went there, and I would say it's also a really amazing place to live and study. I want to mention to you, perhaps many of you already know, but the deadline to apply for admission to the College of Europe is the 19th January of 2022. I will talk to you a little bit about how you can apply in just a little bit, but first let's look at the academic requirements. So in order to qualify as a candidate to the College of Europe, you need to either have a master's degree or a bachelor's degree that is at least 240 ECTS. And you need to be proficient in both English and French. English is minimum B2, I believe, and French is A2 to B1. And you can have a different area of, you can have a variety of area of interest to apply, European affairs, European integration, but also foreign policy, security studies, and energy studies. When we look at the student profile, especially at the College of Europe, because the program is called European Interdisciplinary Studies, the student profile is quite diverse. So we have students who have a background in law, economics, political or social sciences, but also like myself in linguistics and journalism, but even natural sciences and engineering. So there are students who come from very different backgrounds, and it's quite interesting to study with all of them. You don't have to have a professional experience to apply to the college, but also I would like to mention, for example, there are students who come there right after their bachelor's, like me, but also students who have worked not many years, but maybe 5 or 6 years, and they're already 30 years old. So there are different backgrounds. So the tuition fee and the board and lodging at the College of Europe next academic year is 26,000 euros. This covers basically everything: the tuition fee, the exams, the 2 study trips that I mentioned, the language academy, language proficiency certificates, but also accommodation, meals. You also get a basic medical care and can benefit from all the facilities on campus. So it's a package deal, let's say. But of course, in this climate in Turkey, it's very hard to self-finance your studies if it's 26,000 euros. But at the College of Europe, 70% of the students are awarded full or partial scholarships by their country. And I don't know, are we all Turkish students here, or do we have someone from another country?
We also have international students as well.
Okay, perhaps when I'm explaining the scholarships for Turkish citizens, the international students can write in the chat which country they come from, so that I can perhaps mention the scholarships. So for Turkish citizens, there are 2 options for scholarships. One of them is the scholarship scheme offered by the Directorate for EU Affairs of the Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in Turkish AB Başkanlığı. I'm sure you're familiar with it, and the Jean Monnet Scholarship. But as you know, the deadline for the Jean Monnet Scholarship Program has already passed for this year, at least. But you can still apply to the scholarship offered by the Directorate for EU Affairs. And I will tell you a little bit how to apply. I don't see anyone in the chat, but if you would like to know about scholarship schemes about your particular country, you can write it in the chat even a little bit later. But I just want to mention, for each country, the selection committee is different and the scholarship criteria is different. So in Turkey, you are entitled to a full scholarship, but for example, in other countries, there are partial scholarships. So you need to look into the criteria for your own country if you're not from Turkey, but you can also reach me. I can try to help you, or just write it in the chat until the end of the presentation. And there are also scholarships offered by the College of Europe. So in addition to the Jean Monnet Scholarship and the Directorate for EU Affairs Scholarship, you can also benefit from history scholarships at Natolin. I have 2 friends, one from Bilkent University from the Translation and Interpretation Department, and one from another university who got the history scholarship at Natolin. Of course, you need to be interested in studying history. But if you have a background or interest in history, I would recommend you to apply to the history scholarship as well. So how can you apply to the College of Europe? First, you need to go to admissions.collegeofeurope.eu. Maybe I can ask Bahar to send the links that I shared with her earlier. So you can go on the College of Europe website and go to admissions, go to the admissions section. Then when you're making your application, you can choose a maximum 2 study programs. So this one can be in Bruges, one can be in Natolin, both can be in Bruges. It's up to you, really. I had only made one application, just to Natolin. And you need to upload your CV, your motivation letter. I believe it's around 600 words. It was the case last year. You also upload your diplomas, transcripts, 2 recommendation letters, it's very important, language proficiency certificates, and other documents. There is no application fee in order to apply. If you're pre-selected for Turkish citizens, the selection committee is from the Directorate for EU Affairs, and they will call you for an interview. And after the interview, you will know if you are admitted or not, and if you have received the scholarship. So the decisions of the admissions usually come around May or June in 2022. And I would like to remind you, if you're applying to the scholarship offered by the Directorate for EU Affairs, you should undergo a different application procedure. Yes, Bahar sent it in the chat. So you need to check also how to apply for the scholarship as well. So yeah, this is it from me for now. Thank you very much. And yes, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you so much as well. Now, if our participants have any questions, they can raise their hand, ask directly, or if they do not wish to engage, open their cameras or microphones, they can write it in the chat so that we can direct them to our speaker.
Yes, don't be shy if you have any questions. And of course, perhaps now you don't have any questions, but I also again ask Bahar if she can to share my contact details. So
we have,
you did.
That's sent to me. Yes, okay. It's our participants ask, what are the next steps for your personal career and what are your plans after your master's degree?
Yes, thanks for the question. So as I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, I was up until last week, I was doing an Erasmus Plus internship in Brussels at an NGO called ALDA. It is European Association for Local Democracy. So the College of Europe also offers Erasmus Plus scholarships. So it was a good chance for me to get into the Brussels bubble and experience it a little bit, because as you might know, after the College of Europe, most of the alumni want to work with EU institutions or in Brussels, in NGOs or lobbies that work with EU institutions, or different institutions in the world that deal with EU affairs, like EU delegations. So I did my internship there, and hopefully, as you know, the EU institutions, perhaps for those of you who don't know, offer traineeship programs such as the Schuman traineeship at the European Parliament and the Blue Book traineeship at the European Commission. So I'm hoping to do one of these traineeships because they are a great opportunity for you. Maybe I can write it in the chat if you're interested. And yes, if not, I will try to find something else. I also don't know what I will do at the moment, but I'm applying for internships in Brussels, let's say.
Another question is Jean Monnet enough to cover the living expenses, and can we work as well during our studies?
So as I mentioned before, when you get accepted to the College of Europe, if you get the scholarship from the Directorate for EU Affairs, it covers the tuition fee and accommodation and meals, board and lodging. But if you get a Jean Monnet scholarship, you get, for the College of Europe at least, the tuition fee, board and lodging is covered. But as far as I know, you also get funding for your flights, and you get a monthly allowance. I would say it's Jean Monnet would be more than enough because, I mean, you already have accommodation, you have meals, you have the tuition fee covered. It only leaves you with personal expenses, and with the monthly allowance of Jean Monnet, at least in Poland, it should be more than enough. Also, I know some colleagues who study at the College of Europe in Bruges, in Belgium, with the Jean Monnet scholarship, but it should be enough. I would say you wouldn't have time to work even part-time at the College of Europe because it's a very intense 10-month program. So in my opinion, you wouldn't find the time to be working. But even without the Jean Monnet scholarship, with the Directorate for EU Affairs scholarship, basically your living expenses is covered. So I don't think you would need to work. But of course, this is an option, but just it's my personal opinion.
Thank you. And in the chat we have, how would you compare the education at Bilkent and the College of Europe? Is the workload heavier or lighter?
Well, I think it depends because I studied at the translation and interpreting department. But of course, you need to keep in mind that the College of Europe is a master's program. And at Bilkent, I only did my bachelor's degree. But I would say, in addition to the workload, there is a big extracurricular part of the program of the College of Europe. So in addition to your classes, in 10 months, you are attending different activities, conferences. So because it's a very short time, 10 months, it's not that long, it's not a 4-year program, compared with the advanced master's degree, I would say it was definitely more workload than Bilkent for me, at least. But as I said, it's a master's degree and it's only 10 months. So maybe someone who studied in a different department at Bilkent would answer otherwise.
I mean, you're right. And one thing that I'm wondering is that while applying for scholarships, we're submitting CVs and motivation letters and references. What do you think about the must-haves in your CV if you're applying to College of Europe for as a scholarship student, to be a scholarship student during our master's studies? And what, for example, what type of references, I think I can put it that way, would be make you more eligible to be chosen?
Yes, Bahar, thanks for this question. I think it's a very good question. So when you're applying, firstly, your motivation letter is quite important because, as I mentioned, it's not very long. When I was applying, it was only 600 words. So you really need to be very precise and clear as to why you're applying to the College of Europe and why you are a very strong candidate. And I would say, when writing your motivation letter, you need to keep in mind that the College of Europe, of course, wants students with a very strong academic background, but also they are looking for students who can represent their country. In my case, it's Turkey, because you are studying with the future Eurocrats, as they say it, and you are promoting your country, your culture, your government, basically, because in Turkey, you are selected by a governmental institution. So you really need to show that you have the necessary social skills in order to adapt to this European environment and multicultural and multilingual environment. So in my case, I studied translation and interpreting. I don't have a background in international relations, but I had a very strong interest in EU affairs, and I did a lot of extracurricular activities regarding the EU. There was a EU summit organized by the Political Thought Society at Bilkent when I was studying there. I attended this. I attended different events regarding EU, but not just that, you know, I was part of a lot of different student societies. So I think it's important in your application to show that you have the necessary academic background, language skills, but also the motivation and social skills to fit into the experience of the College of Europe and show that you are European, let's say. And what is being European? It's being able to fit into a very diverse culture and environment, in my opinion. So you need to show all these aspects, your interest in the EU and your skills and your social background, let's say. For the references, of course, it depends who you want to get it from. I got a reference from my department, translation and interpreting, but also another reference from a professor at the IR department. I would recommend also getting additional reference letters for your language proficiency, just from a professor saying, yes, I can say that the student has a level of this in English or French. I think it's quite useful. I would also advise you to add your any certificates that you have that is relevant to your application, especially when you're going back to the motivation letter. I would say don't repeat your CV. They already have your CV, but try to explain why the things in your CV make you a suitable candidate for the College of Europe and for the scholarship. And another tip that I got, because at Bilkent you have a professor's initiative, I think, that they can check your motivation letter. I forgot the name, but they helped me quite a lot. It's the English department, I think. And they told me if I add specific courses that I found are relevant to my area of interest, I can put this in my motivation letter. You can also mention, if you already have an idea what you want your master thesis topic to be about, what you want to focus on in your studies. So this shows that you have already researched the program and you are motivated. So I hope it was clear. I talked about many different things, but this would be my tips for a good application.
Thank you so much.
And sorry, and also the application is a bit long, so don't leave it to the last day. Like, started and get the necessary documents and just take your time so that you don't make mistakes or you don't forget something, you know.
Thank you. And we have one last question that says, are there anyone you know who's a graduate from College of Europe and joined the Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs as a diplomat?
Yes, of course, there are many College of Europe alumni who work at the Turkish MFA. And I guess the most favorite, the most known example would be Faruk Kaymakçı, the Deputy Foreign Minister and I think he's Directorate for EU Affairs. He's an alumnus of the College of Europe in Bruges. And but within the ministry, there are many, not many, but quite a few College of Europe alumni. If you want to pursue a career in diplomacy, of course, the College of Europe is quite prestigious, and there are many people who choose this path after the college.
So there seems to be no other question that's sent to me. And so thank you so much for the presentation and being with us tonight. It was very informative and educative. It's always nice to have our alumni coming and talking about more about, let's say, tips and how-tos about that's not always written in the website. So thank you so much for that as well.
Thank you very much, Bahar. And I would like to add, just don't hesitate to contact me if you have any further questions. But also, if you apply and if you're pre-selected, I recommend that you contact either me, but also other alumni from the College of Europe, because it would be quite useful for your interview to get some tips, to talk to some alumni. Please, this would be the one last thing I'd like to add.
Thank you. And for our participants, I have sent the necessary links and our speakers' communication information in the chat, so you can reach it from there. Thank you so much for joining us.